Matt, Ireland have named their team. Gibson Park in, Henshaw in, Ryan Baird. Obviously, there's injuries for all those big calls apart from Gibson Park. He comes in to start. But the calls you would have made, Matt, and, it's such a strong 23, never mind a 15.
Yeah, I agree with all the selection. I think, Andy Farrell deserves huge credit for his selection policy, not just for this game, but over the last 12 months, the way he's developed players, produced depth within the squad. I mean, who would have thought that Tom O'Toole would be sitting on a bench for a Grand Slam decider a year ago? And that's a credit to Tom, but it's also a credit to Andy for giving players like Tom opportunity in A games, and then obviously with a few injuries, Tom's shown what he can do, and as have a number of other players that aren't in the matchday 23. There's Ryan Baird starting. Now, we all know Baird's incredible athleticism. Probably a criticism I've heard of him was he was maybe a little bit immature in his decision-making process, but Baird has grown and moved, been excellent for Leinster, and I think is a huge prospect for the future, knowing that we've got Henderson and Burns injured. So how wonderful is it to have that depth in second row? Jamison Gibson Park, without being in any way derogatory to Conor Murray, who's one of our all-time great players, he does put pace on the game. And when that pace is put on the game, the defence of the opposition really struggles. And he will put a pace on the game that the English defence will really find hard to cope with. And I think if we're not talking about England right now, but I do have to acknowledge that their defence has been appalling, absolutely appalling. And their defence against France, almost every aspect, their kick chase, their set play defence, their phase defence, there was no line speed to it, no accuracy, and there were more gaps in the Sydney Harbour heads. You could have driven the Queen Mary through some of those gaps. But I do think that's a great selection. Robbie Henshaw coming back, he's got a lot of experience at outside centre, much better for us than Bundy there, who was a better inside centre. Robbie's got both. Right across the park, Peter O'Mahony was magnificent last week, earned his role. Caelan goes back to the bench, was magnificent when he came on. Do we get Josh Van der Fleet to throw the ball in again? The only thing we don't want is Cian Healy taking the tap kicks because he does an air swing. But, it's a really powerful Irish team that is reaping the benefits of 15 months to 2 years of excellent selections from Andy Farrell and his staff.
Alan, it's obviously disappointing for Ian Henderson, who you rate, but Ryan Baird, you've always been a big advocate of him. You think he's, if I'm right in saying, really athletic, which obviously he is, but also just a really good player and hopefully going to progress from here and keep progressing.
Yeah, he's still young, isn't he? And Ian Henderson by no means is finished. I think he's had a tough season with injuries. Tried to get back and get some match practice pre-Christmas with Ulster, got back and got games under his belt, and was obviously a big boost to have him back in the Irish squad. But Ryan Baird is a different type of player. He's what you'd call, without being disrespectful to any second rows in the past, he's your modern day athletic machine around the field. This guy is just so fit. He can step people. He's so quick. He can score tries from 60, 70 yards out. We've seen him do that with Leinster. There is a difference, a step up when you go to the top level. And, he would be really tested if he started in a World Cup against France, against New Zealand, against South Africa. You're coming up and you think about Etzebeth and De Jager and these guys. So that's the level, and that's the top level, and it takes time. You need experience. I think he's after getting bigger physically. I think there's no reason why he can't consistently become, a star at this level, because I think he has all the attributes. But given the way the game has gone, it'll be interesting to see what Matt thinks of this as a coach. I think the teams that are being successful at the moment are the ones that are playing rugby, i.e. they're throwing the ball around. And he fits in perfectly to a strategy as a coach who's a footballer. He can pass, he can step, he can run as quick as a winger. So obviously if he gets the fundamentals right with his scrummaging, he's tight playing the maul, because sometimes we underestimate the value of a destructive second row in that maul who can split things up, who can get in early, has that little bit of nous about stopping the opposition get set, all that stuff. So they're the little fundamentals that you really would look to, and that's what Paul O'Connell would want first and foremost. The other stuff just comes naturally to Ryan Bear. I think he's a wonderful footballer, but we shouldn't expect too much from him too soon. But at this stage, I have no issue with him playing at this level, because I think he's good enough, and I think he's only going to get better.